This is an iPhone X, and if you're a vlogger, filmmaker, somebody who wants to shoot some of the best high-grade professional video, well, it's gonna be one of your greatest tools. But like any great tool, it's gonna have some pros, and it's gonna have some things that just flat out suck about it. So that's what this video is about. Let's get into it. So if you have an iPhone 10 and you want to have an awesome vlog or do some filmmaking and just want it to look superb, that's what we're going to cover in here. We're going to cover exactly how to do it with the workarounds with this phone. And I just got to say, if you don't have an iPhone 10, I have almost 2 million views on videos that I've shot with an iPhone 6 Plus. And that's pretty cool. And here's how this video is going to work. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to cover first what is awesome about this phone, what works, what makes it almost irreplaceable in my low budget filmmaking, vlogging equipment. But also, we're gonna then talk about what doesn't work, some of the problems which just, man, they piss me off about this phone. But then we're gonna talk about the most important part, the workarounds for that. So if you're running into these problems, how do we fix them and make awesome videos so that with only this, you could produce world-class material? So who the hell am I? Or does it even matter? I'm Steve Maeda. I've been a videographer for a long time, since my early 20s, and I'm in my 40s now. I've also been a men's coach for the last 12 years of my life. But most importantly, I shoot a ton of video. This is why I'm making this video, and we'll make more videos on how we can really do some awesome stuff with budget filmmaking equipment. So let's get into that. And let's start with the pros of the iPhone. So first and foremost with the iPhone, what makes it so special is that it shoots excellent video. It's not as good as a DSLR, like I have a Canon system right now. I believe the Canons shoot better quality, mainly because of the lenses and so on. But man, it's good enough. It's great enough. So you can get awesome image quality with the iPhone. Now, what's even more important is that the front-facing camera, the selfie mode camera, which is excellent for vlogging, is better than the previous models that I've seen. So when I use it for vlogging, I was so pleased with the front-facing camera, a little bit wider angle lens, and it was good enough. I've used that for a ton of vlogs. I like it also because it seems to be a little bit more contrasty. It's good enough. Now there are some problems with it, and we'll get to that with the second part of this video, but let's continue on with one thing that makes the iPhone absolutely irreplaceable to me with my camera setup. Now the thing that makes this almost irreplaceable in my camera setup is basically this. This shoots 120 frames per second slow motion in 1080p. That means in high definition, at an extremely high quality, this shoots in slow motion. So that's what 120 frames per second is. It can go down to a quarter speed. It can even go less than that because it can shoot at 240 frames per second, which means that it goes down to 12% slow motion. Now I have no need for that. Maybe some extreme sports photography does, but you know, hey, I don't need that. So with this camera, the rear facing camera, I can shoot something in slow motion, 25% speed, and it looks beautiful. For cinematic quality, it's awesome, and I use it for everything. Why? Because if I want a DSLR camera or a mirrorless camera like the Sony or Sony A7 III or the Panasonic GH5, I'm gonna pay $2,000 for that camera to be able to get slow motion. Now on a Canon, I need to pay $5,000 to get a camera that can go beyond 60 frames per second. So in that sense, the iPhone is amazing. It's $1,000. You can pay it off in payments, but even more importantly than that, you can use it for all its other phone qualities, and it's great. It's awesome. So for me, absolutely irreplaceable. The iPhone in my camera setup for budget filmmaking, for budget vlogging, for B-roll, those cutaway shots, this is unbelievable. Now, there's plenty of stuff that's awesome about this phone, but one thing that I don't use but needs to be talked about is that you can shoot 4K in it. So I do most of my videos with 1080p to save storage space, and I do have the iPhone with the 256 gigabyte storage, but I just don't see a need right now for shooting in 4K, especially just with where I'm at on a budget with my other equipment. But when you think about this, if I wanted a Canon camera or a Sony camera that shot in 4K, I'd need to spend $2,000 just to get to that level. That's crazy. So with the iPhone, for $1,000 and you use it for a phone, it has that, which is super, super cool. Now, also with that, you can shoot at 60 frames per second in 4K. That's nuts. That is just crazy. So that's another benefit. And the last benefit that I'm gonna point out with the iPhone 10 is that it's weatherproof, which is super awesome, water resistant. If I'm doing stuff in water, which I do stuff a lot, I can drop it, not worry about it. I can even take it underwater, which I don't really do too much. But the thing is that if it's raining and I have my Canon rig out, I'm covering this bad boy, I'm getting inside, I'm protecting my lenses unless they're weatherproof lenses, and I'm getting the hell out of there. If I have my iPhone, I'm good to go. That's pretty awesome. But now let's get to some not so awesome stuff, like what sucks about this phone. Now there's quite a bit that we have a problem with this phone, so let's go through them. This might take a little bit, but what's more important are the workarounds that can be fixed for this phone. So let's start with number one, camera shake, front facing camera and rear facing camera. Camera saturation and high contrast situations, so color saturation, we'll cover that as well. Audio problems, especially audio problems with the dongle and where the mic setup is on the camera. There's 3 points. And audio problems with accessories, overheating, and the battery in cold weather. So that's a lot of the things that I have a problem with the iPhone 10 if we're using it for filmmaking. So let's get into what all of that means. So the first one is camera shake. And let's say I'm walking and vlogging like I am right now with my Canon SL2, where the majority of this video log is shot, except for the B-roll stuff, with the iPhone. My hand is shaking, it's bumping along. And let's say if I run, it is even more shaky, but it's still doable, and you know, it's kind of annoying to watch and all those different things. Let's try and do the same thing with the iPhone, with the rear-facing camera, then the front-facing camera. All right, so this is the rear-facing camera with the iPhone 10, and it's a little bit shaky, but let's say we run and move around. It gets a little bit warbly, right? It starts to have those poles at the end where it can't catch up, and it gets all crazy. And when you're vlogging and walking, that stuff happens, and that's no good. And now let's go for the front-facing camera, which I really, really like, but with this camera shake, this crazy stuff happens. There's no image stabilization with the front-facing camera, and because of that, the image quality degrades massively. It doesn't just warble, it messes up. So what's the workaround for this? In order to get stable video footage from this while walking and vlogging, which is a super common thing, well, the workaround is a little bit expensive, but it's worth it, and that's a gimbal. This is the DJI Osmo Mobile, which I would actually not recommend. If I were to do it all over again, go with the Zhiyun Smooth Q. And one of the reasons for that, well, I'll make a review about this and tell you about it why. Get a gimbal. This gimbal does the job. And I've shot literally some of the best shots that I've done in the last 5 months using this and this combined. The best, better than the shots that I've done with my DSLR, and it's pretty awesome. So let's check out how a gimbal solves all these problems for the front-facing camera and the rear-facing camera. And here we go with the rear-facing camera walking with the DJI Osmo and the iPhone 10. And let's start running just to see how it goes and if the image quality is better. I can already tell you it will be better, and a gimbal is just badass for so many reasons. But another video for that. All right, we are moving, vlogging live with the front-facing camera, and I'm using the DJI Osmo. I'm gonna start running and see how that goes. As you can tell, little bit of shake, but pretty good. And our image doesn't degrade like it was before. Now, this portion of the video I actually had to reshoot because I noticed that the Canon SL2 ran into a similar problem, not to the same degree as the iPhone X. The iPhone X has a lot of trouble with color saturation, not necessarily in environments like this, but environments like this. And there we are. So basically, right now, we have the sun just blasting me in the face. We have the blue sky behind me, and as you can see up here on, where is it, the top of the screen, where there's that gradient of blue, it gets tough. Also the green, in contrast to the blue, there's a little bit of silhouetting. So here, I'm overexposing myself even more. I think it was a little bit there. But you can see how the color is really, it's losing, it's trying to figure out what are these colors, where are the greens, where are the blues. But then when we darken it, we slow the shutter speed, you see that deep, rich blue, and man, it's really trying to figure out where it's at. Now this is with the Canon, and let's check it out with the iPhone. Okay, so let's figure this out. Front-facing camera on the iPhone. Man, this looks good. I like this a lot. I like it a ton. Side light coming in before I was in the shade. Remember, the shade is your friend. Side light coming in. Let's turn that into some backlight. That looks good. And notice how it's all white. It's overexposed because the sun is coming behind me. And there's only a little bit of a problem. There's a little bit of skin tone jumping. Maybe that's just my poor complexion. But we don't get that so much with the Canon. But check this out. When we switch around to this side, now I'm being blasted by the sun. The iPhone tries to meter. Look at this. How did I turn pink? I'm not sunburned right now. How is this ultra green, which it's trying to figure out, and this ultra blue, it's having trouble distinguishing those two. There's like this white effigy around it. Man, it's not, in the blue, it's just, it's having trouble figuring that out and getting the right skin tone. So I never like this. When I'm shooting with the sun facing me, it's not good. And let's just jump to the front facing or the rear facing camera because it's kind of the same thing and in some ways worse. And so here we have the rear facing camera, same problems, right? Blue sky, greens, hard to make sense out of. Right where the greens and the blues meet, it's all screwed up, but my face is red and it's not. I'm not even sunburned, that's totally screwed up. So let's go side light. Side light, not bad, but to be honest, I preferred the front facing camera better than the rear. This is the rear. Just the skin tones don't look as good with that side light action. But then we move here. And this is where I want you guys to pay attention, okay? So first off, there's this reflection that's coming from my phone and it's hitting my face and throwing everything off. But here, first, I want you to notice the skin tones. Not as good. They're just not as good. The skin tones, it's like it's jumping. It's like an uneven complexion. It's having trouble with this bright exposure behind me and everything else. Now, check it out. When I do a lens flare, meaning the sun is gonna hit the lens right here, right? And when that happens, look at the sky. It can't figure it out. It cannot figure out whether the sky is blue or white. And when you're shooting something, and it might be there's this crazy reflection that's happening here. It just has trouble with it. The thing that makes me so mad about the color range of the iPhone though, didn't happen on the iPhone 6 for over 500 videos shot in the studio. So let's talk about that. And now we're in my studio. So here, usually I put it together better and all sort of stuff. It's basically just a room with a bunch of stuff in it, but it has these lights. Boom! And they're fluorescent lights. I haven't switched to the LEDs yet, but I've done over 500 video blogs in here while using this iPhone, the iPhone 6 Plus. This is the 10. And it's super cool. You know, I just mounted it on there, used the front-facing camera, which for this one only shot at 720p. And man, did a bunch of great stuff, plugged it in with some really badass audio and all that sort of stuff, which I'll do for another video. But check out what happens when I use this iPhone 10 with the studio lighting. It's terrible. See how my face looks good here? Well, watch this. There's this strange red tone to it. It's crazy. This did not happen with the iPhone 6 Plus. But now, it just, see, it gets flat. It's weird. This is the rear, the front-facing camera. Let's try with the rear. And pretty much the same thing. Still that same tonality. It's flat. It was actually better when using fluorescent lights, using this, the iPhone 6 Plus, than the iPhone 10. So I don't know what it is about the color processing. It does work better for certain lighting, but here it's not good. And so I don't even use my iPhone anymore to use this studio setup for video blogging. What I do is I use this. I use my DSLR. You know what, to be honest, I don't really video blog in the studio anymore, even though I got all this fancy stuff, but we're gonna start doing interviews soon. This mic is dead, by the way, right now. Well, it works when I plug it in. In any case, let's go back outside. And we're back. So let's talk about audio, because there's a few things with audio that kind of go wrong with the iPhone 10. So first off, if you want professional grade audio, you got to run it through a dongle or through Bluetooth. You got to get the dongle. The dongle is a pain in the butt. And the reason why it's a pain in the butt for so many reasons is you can't charge your phone while you're shooting. With this dongle, this causes problems. And it causes problems mainly because if you're shooting video, you got about an hour to 2 hours, depending on what you're shooting. If you're doing slow motion or if it's really hot out or cold out, that changes the battery life. But you don't have a lot of time with this. So it was really cool on the iPhone 6 Plus where I could carry a separate battery pack, plug it in to the power source, and then run my audio input there. I didn't have to worry about it. I could shoot forever until I ran out of space. Pretty awesome. Can't do that with this. You are limited by time. So the first thing is the dongle input for the audio, and this causes so many problems that we're gonna get into, and especially with the workarounds, solve them. The second thing is there is, for the front-facing camera, there's a mic here, all right, that picks up your voice. It's not here, it's here. For the rear-facing camera, there's a mic here that picks up your voice, not on the general talking area or whatever microphone that you use for that. Now, if you use the Filmic Pro app, which we'll talk about that in the workarounds, you can make it come out of here, but these are pretty good microphones. The only problem is if you're using a external lens, like if you're using a Moment lens in a Moment case, you can't run audio. You cannot vlog with that. If you are using a Moment lens, which they're badass lenses, you can only get video, and your sound needs to be recorded without this. Now, if you have one of those clip-on lenses like I have an Aki, I clip it on there, and then it muffles the audio in the front if I'm using the front one, muffles the audio in the back if I'm using the back one. But in order to get that awesome wide angle look that I like, I use this beautiful little adapter, but check out what happens. Now I'm wide, but the sound is muffled. Why is that? Wait a minute, you probably couldn't hear me. Because the iPhone X has a mic right by that camera, which muffles it. If I have the Filmic Pro app, I can run it out of here, but it's just an inconvenience, and it sucks, and it pisses me off. So let's get into the workarounds for how we shoot audio through the dongle. So we have this, which is the Rode Video Mic Me, and I'm just using that as an example of what will not work with this. We have this Unazi mount, which is gonna help us mount it on a tripod, because this phone camera mount will not work with this to mount this. I know it sounds confusing, tremendously crazy. We have the iPhone, which we're gonna need that. We also have the dongle, we're gonna need that so it can adapt to this thing. And then we have this, which is a TRRS converter. So in order for this mic to communicate with the phone through the dongle, oh, so confused, we need to have this cable. So let me show you how easy this is to put all together and how not confusing it actually is. Okay, so first thing first, we're gonna start with the tripod. So you need any kind of tripod, it doesn't matter. You could use your Joby tripod. This is a Manfrotto cell phone tripod. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna unscrew this little cell phone mounting thing. And the reason why I have to change this out is because it cannot keep this on it. It is not able to mount this guy, and that's what we need to do. All right, it's a big issue. It actually took me a little bit to figure out. I wish there was a video on it. And this is where I'm going to use this Unazi mount. It's metal, it's kind of heavy, costs a few bucks, but definitely worth it, especially if you just want to set up an interview setting. So what this does is these things just fold out. It's really strong, right? You mount this on the Manfrotto tripod or whatever pod you have. Then we get the cell phone. I just basically put this on the Unazi stand. Super cool. And what makes the Unazi stand super cool as well is that it has this little shoe mount. This is called a shoe. All right. It has this little shoe mount, so I can mount this mic on it. and we're good to go, okay? So super cool. How do I get this to stick into here? Because on the iPhone 7, on the iPhone 8, on the iPhone 10, they made you use one of these things. So you gotta get the dongle. This is the cable that the Rode Video Micro comes with, but you need to get an adapter, okay? And the reason why you need to get an adapter, this is an adapter that is a TRRS cable that has the 3 dots, and that is what allows the iPhone to read the proper audio information coming from the microphone. So I plug this in here, the gray one goes in here, the black one goes in the Rode Video Micro, and we're good to go. Super cool. This is a pretty awesome interview setup, so let's test out what all of that looks like. And so now here I am with the Rode Video Micro plugged into this TRRS cable adapter into the dongle, into the phone, needing to mount this Video Micro using the Unazi whatever on a Manfrotto camera tripod. If I were to do interviews with people that I just wanted to be easy and simple on my phone, this is it. Yeah, you suck, Apple. So the other workaround that we have for the iPhone 10 with picking up audio is we record sound separate. What that means is I'm gonna have a lavalier mic and I'm plugging that into a audio recorder. Actually, my go-to microphone, my setup for this, the Rode Lav Plus. I believe that's what it's called, but it's a Rode microphone. It's a lavalier. It's great. It plugs right into your iPhone. They have different inputs than just a standard lavalier mic, and that works out awesome. So that's my next workaround, or for the audio, and especially if you're using lens adapters which muffle the microphones, is you gotta record them separate. It's inconvenient. It sucks, but you do what you gotta do. All right, let's get into the last two things that are my pet peeves about the iPhone 10. All right, last two pet peeves for the iPhone 10. They have to do with weather. Now, the iPhone is somewhat weatherproofed, water resistant, super convenient for many things, like right here, if I wanna open up my iPhone and run video and dump it into this puddle, it'll work. That's crazy. Oh my God, it's buried. The iPhone works, it still works. That's pretty freaking awesome. That's cool. The phone did not break. Holy shit, I'm crazy. I've done this before. But anyway, that's badass, okay? So the thing is that if it gets too cold, and I believe it's like 25 degrees or something like that, your battery goes zoom. Your phone just stops working, it stops functioning. And the fact of the matter is, in many parts of the world, it gets that cold and you can't shoot video, or it malfunctions too much, or all this sort of stuff. Man, I gotta get all this like algae out. I'm just gonna put it in my pocket anyway because I'm gross. So the other thing too is when it's hot, it overheats. So in Texas, where I shoot a lot of my stuff, it's 90 degrees out. And I was out shooting this protest, interviewing people, going crazy with the DJI Osmo, getting awesome shots. And after like 30 minutes of shooting, it overheated. Now, I was shooting at 120 frames per second. I was running the Filmic Pro app, and you know, it just might put more strain on the phone. But at 90 degrees, in fact, I think it was under 90 degrees that day, it shut off. It couldn't hang with the sun, the heat from the crowd, all that sort of stuff. And that's a bummer, man. If you are trying to shoot something and you're trying to shoot something professional and you can get that quality on the iPhone, why not? And it's too hot and it shuts off, then you gotta throw it in a bag of ice for 10 minutes in order for it to function again. That sucks. So that's something that you should watch out for. The workarounds for that, I don't really have any, you know? Stay out of the cold, get a different camera setup for it. Man, that's terrible advice, but that's the best I got for you on the hot and the cold, or those extreme hot and cold situations with the iPhone 10. Now, there's one last thing I want to talk about, and I've been talking about a bunch, so let's get to it. So that is going to be the Filmic Pro video app. You gotta get this. You just have to get it. It is basically advertised as it turns your iPhone into a DSLR. Now, it doesn't necessarily do that, but it gives it the capabilities to do all the stuff that a DSLR can do, which is like change the aperture, change the focus, do that all manually. You can mess with the white balance and color temperature, which is super awesome. The rear microphone, the front microphone, the microphone that you talk to when, it's, by your mouth, that one, the bottom one, I believe it is. You can change different audio settings. You can just do so much with the camera. So one of my favorite things to do when I'm shooting is I turn the Filmic Pro app, I turn it on to 120 frames per second. I put it on the DJI Osmo. The thing is that when I turn on that Filmic Pro app, man, I can focus on one thing, get exposure on another. It's beautiful. I can stop it. I can move it to 4K if I want to. I can move it to 720p. I can move it to 1080p at 240 frames per second. The Filmic Pro app is super, super awesome, and it's gonna help you with so many of the different workarounds that we've been talking about. In any case, guys, long video, lots of stuff, but I'm gonna be making more videos on budget filmmaking as well as my Canon setup, how I get certain shots, how I set them up, the different equipment that I use, and what I use on a budget. Now, I know things like a DJI Osmo Mobile or the Zhiyun Smooth Q, those are accessories that cost $100, $150, $200, and some of the microphones. But look, if you're serious about it, that's not much. This is crazy. We live in a day and age where we can literally shoot like pros or record audio like pros on a budget. That's cool. And I want you to do that. So spread your word, share your message, do your art, be who you are, open up the window to your soul, to the world, hold a magnifying glass to it, and do some good stuff. In any case, guys, if you like this, subscribe to my channel, check out my short films, check out my vlogs and all that sort of stuff, talking about weird things that you're probably not into. But if you are, give it a like, give it a thumbs up, leave it a comment, get to know me. And if you're ever in Austin, hit me up. I'm out.